What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the singles off the 2009 album by Don Omar. Basically, this project is called iDon, and it came out in the spring of 2009. So the thing about this particular project was this is a big deal around the early 2009, late 2000s type fair as far as that pitch can happen with it. iDon, basically Don Omar stretched into like the electronica and early EDM type field as far as that particular pitch kind of happened with it. It was just some great stuff here to kind of it was just some great stuff here to kind of get. And this is a particular kind of hit album. It's different from like his 2006 album. I forget what the album's particularly kind of called, but he dropped a couple albums in 2006, one of which was Los Bandoleros Reloaded, and the other of which was a 2006 album, which I reviewed the singles of back in 2022. I'd have was pretty good concept to get those in particular, but this is an interesting type one just because this has like some similar sounds to like Akon and Tayo Cruz and some folks like that, just electronic type, just the electronica type sound that was popular around the late 2000s, early 2010s as far as that pitch can have. It's not quite, this project is not quite full blown EDM, but I would have to say it's pretty damn close. I'd have to say this definitely feels like some MySpace type music and just overall dance club type pop that just has a lot of appeal about it and just that commercial spark. So this project is probably going to get a pretty high commercial score, but I'd have to say there were 4 singles off this project. Out of those 4, I wound up recommending at least 3. Now, one of which was only recommended in Venezuela, I'd have to suppose, but still good enough concept to get these singles. There's some excellent type stuff on here. It really makes me wish that there was an English version of this particular album, especially in the singles. I'd have to suppose there's some dope stuff. Don Omar is definitely on. Don Omar is definitely on some crown type pitch as far as that particularly happens with it. Just some excellent stuff. These are definitely some rave kind of. These are definitely like some rave kind of futuristic type dance rumblers as far as that pitch happens with. I would just have to say some overall stellar stuff. Just in particular, I'd have to say so some great stuff. So we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. Just would have to say do like the aesthetic of this particular album. It's just some pretty pitch type stuff. I'd have to say, like I was saying, it's different from his 2006 albums. I'd have to suppose, but it's just a dope enough concept to kind of get some of this in particular because it's very similar to Tayo Cruz, Akon, some of those type folks. Maybe a little bit of Usher around the late 2000s, early 2010s, as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just typical kind of fair. I'd have to say, just regular type stuff, just within it seemed like it was revolutionary just for the time because I can't think of I don't think Daddy Yankee went in this particular direction. I don't know how many folks apart from Don Omar and like the Latin rap and like the Latin pop and Latin rap kind of market went towards this particular field. I would like to find more albums like this. So if there are more albums like iDon, I would definitely have to suppose I'm gonna have to find them. This is definitely pretty excellent stuff here. So the first single was Virtual Diva. This came out in early 2009. This is a pretty highlighted song. So basically, the 4 singles off this album would be Virtual Diva, Sexy Robotica, Ciao Bella, and Blue Zone. And out of those 4 singles, the only one I don't recommend is just Ciao Bella. So that's basically, I'll talk about that one in a moment, but we'll talk about Virtual Diva. So this is basically like a jazzy kind of early, Virtual Diva is like a jazzy kind of early EDM, late 2000s dance cut, I would have to say. It's pretty melodic and catchy. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a vanilla kind of dance club kickstart. I would definitely have to suppose. Pretty highlighted type one. Once again, reminds me quite a bit of Tayo Cruz and some folks like that. Just a typical kind of sound of like the late 2000s, early 2010s type fair, just as EDM was starting to kick off and some pitches like that. I have suppose. Just some excellent concepts there. Good concept, just in particular. Don Omar really took advantage of this particular sound and did it quite well, I'd have to say. So it's a real nice jazz that one. Pretty entry type single, I'd have to say. This is probably the one that I would start with. This is probably the most commercial one. This one had the most, this one did the most damage on the charts, on the Latin charts, as far as that pitch can happen. But I would say the Sexy Robotica, I probably like that one better, but I do like the commercial appeal of Virtual Diva that has some good melodies and stuff like that on there. Sexy Robotica is just where the turn up gets a little bit more rage. Sexy Robotica is where the turn up gets a little bit more rave, I'd have to say, but this is still pretty good commercial entry type one. Just the factory type one that you'd probably hear on the radio more, I'd have to say. But basically, some of the lyrics in English, I'd have to say, it's kind of here and there with the translation of these particular ones, but I had to say it's just the concept of having a virtual diva in a nightclub as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just a chick that's just a real badass type chick that just dominates as far as that pitch kind of has with it. And I feel like some of the lyrics I liked on here is just one of the parts in lyrics where he says this chick has the movement of like a bionic woman, which is pretty dope concept to get that in particular. Just like the concept of that. I do like the kind of electronica, kind of iRobot type theme of this particular album. I'd have to suppose pretty good concept for that. Just some futuristic kind of city stepping and just overall gloss as far as that pitch can happen. So that's a good concept. Virtual Diva's definite highlight. Sexy Robotica is another single. This is the second one off here. This is another good highlight just to kind of have within that pitch. This one's a little bit more turned up compared to Virtual Diva, but still a highlighted one. This is like a good 1-2 punch with Virtual Diva. I would have to say good concept to get both of these. Just in particular, some good night stepping as far as that pitch can happen. This song's a little bit more electric and gnarled. I would have to say this has some more. This song has some more electric and gnarled kind of littiness about it, I would definitely suppose. And this is just good for like a big dance craze, I would have to say. So this is a pretty highlighted type one. This is definitely one. It's not If Virtual Diva was something you play at like 7, 8 p.m., I'd say that Sexy Robotica is probably one that you play at like 9:30, 10:30 p.m., something like that, where just the energy is a little bit more turned up, a little bit more drinks in your system, some stuff like that, as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just a real gnarled type one that just has a lot of good craze type energy about it. Just real sleek kind of one that just works for some electronic affairs, as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. So some great stuff. I would say some of the lyrics I like on this particular song, Sexy Robotica, would be there's a part in the song where he says, Don Omar, there's a part in Sexy Robotica where Don Omar says she carries medicine in her tongue, which is a pretty slick line. Definitely like the concept of that. And she supplies it when you kiss her. So it's a dope concept, kind of get that in particular. She has medicine in her tongue, which means she's pretty dangerous and hot and sexy as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just some excellent concepts. Just would have to say a real super stellar one. Can't think of too many English folks that have said that particular concept we're talking about, where a chick that's so dynamite that she carries medicine in her tongue that she supplies when you kiss her. Dope enough concept, get that in particular. Just a real highlight type pitch as far as that kind of goes. Great 1-2 punch of Virtual Diva and Sexy Robotica, like I was saying. And then Blue Zone was kind of the fourth single. Now, this only came out in Venezuela, but still pretty highlighted one. I definitely recommend this one more so than Ciao Bella, but I would have to say this is a nice one. This is like a deep kind of nightclub bounce. I would have to say this just has a sharp pace and crowded kind of social highlight of a song, I'd have to say. And this is just a good stock electronica hit. So this one's probably the more gnarled one. This is probably one that just is like a more factory type one that you would just kind of hear for white noise as far as that pitch kind of happens. This one doesn't have like the most commercial aspects. This one doesn't feel like it was completely marketed as a single. It definitely works like an extra kind of bonus cut as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just an extra type fair that just kind of glossarizes and that just kind of glosses up the album. It's just kind of an extra type hit to kind of happen here. I feel like this probably should have been released as a single. It just didn't have like the massive kind of hook and just overall commercial type of feel, but still pretty highlighted one. Once again, this is better than Ciao Bella, but I feel like Ciao Bella was necessary just because it was just a different pitch, just to not have all these be nightclub kind of just electronica type songs. But I just feel like that one was just a poor ballad. So the concept about Blue Zone, a particular lyric, this one was kind of tricky just because it's not a single, so it didn't have quite as much competent lyric. Blue Zone didn't have quite as much competent lyric translations, I'd have to say, but one particular line off this song I did like was when Don Omar says, 2 more tequilas, prepare to fly. So he talks about that in like the chorus or something like that. 2 more, where he says, have 2 more tequilas, prepare to fly. So it's a pretty dope concept. Get that one in particular. Do like that song. All three of those singles work pretty damn well. But to talk about Ciao Bella real quick, this is just kind of a poor kind of ballad. But to talk about the actual third single on here, which was Ciao Bella, this is just kind of a poor type ballad type song, a little bit more rosy than I would have wanted. It's a very affectionate type song, I'd have to say. Just a real kind of laid back, kickback type one for hangout type fare, I'd have to suppose. But this was not that affable or really didn't have much of a spark to that one in particular. That one's just kind of a sleepy type one that just didn't really do a good job of conveying that type pitch as far as that particular kind of went. Just didn't really do a good job of conveying that pitch as far as that particular kind of went, I would have to suppose. But still, I mean, it serves somewhat of its purpose just because it's a more homely type song, just more rosy type one for relationship type fare as far as that pitch kind of happened, just more affectionate. But this was not quite as sparky of one. This was not that electric as far as that kind of as far as that compellment kind of went with it. Just from that's the vibes I caught from it just from first glance, I'd have to suppose. But that's just kind of the concept. Me not speaking Spanish, I'd have to say, but that's the concept of it. So basically, me recommending 3 out of 4 songs. So me basically recommending 3 out of 4 singles on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give the singles. I'm gonna go ahead and give the score of this album according to the singles basically like an 8.25 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty. I definitely feel like that's pretty damn solid as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just mostly well-meaningly good. I'd have to suppose for the most part. If it just mostly well-meaningly good. If it had just balanced like a single that was not in like a nightclub and electronica type format a little bit better, just had something that would have been like a better ballad or something like that, just with a little bit more spark or compellingness, or affability, I probably would have given this project like a 10 out of 10. It just needed it, but it was just a relatively brief project. This album is only 10 songs as far as that pitch kind of happens, so it just kind of felt like this was just more of like a shot in the arm, kind of jolting, kind of weekend craze of an album. I just feel like the affability behind the rest of the singles, the songwriting was just not quite as full blown, catchy, and just overall affable as far as that pitch kind of goes, but it's still good enough. 8.25 score. The social score, I'm gonna go ahead and give the social score like a 9 out of 10 because I feel like these songs are pretty compelling. I just would have to say the pitch behind it. This is definitely some burst of energy that just has a lot of good sheer appeal. I'd have to suppose I like the theme of this particular album and stuff like that. I do kind of wonder about the rest of this album. I just wonder if there are some other kind of more down tempo type songs. I do wonder if there were some more down tempo type songs that worked off this album a little bit better. But I'd have to say it's just kind of a poor. This it's just kind of a poor type choice, but didn't really that much knock the album. I would have to say just knocked enough just to not get a 10 or like a 9 or something. It was still pretty solid for the most part. I'd say just an overall mostly compelling type album, especially in the singles. I'd have to say so 9 social. In terms of the future, like Don Omar has a number of projects. I do eventually want to get to Los Bandoleros Reloaded. I have to say I'm interested in that one just because that had some singles on there from 2006 as far as that pitch can happen. So I want to get to some more of that next as far as that kind of goes. But I would have to say I did like the theme of this particular album. I'm gonna have to get to some more Don Omar. We'll have to see about some more of these. But I do recommend this project rather well. I'd have to say this is definitely kind of a revolutionary type album, an impactful type one that did some damage. I definitely think it's worth it.